All right, let's get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Let's Imagine event featuring the winners of the 12th Annual Imagine Awards. These are some of the best and the most incredible nonprofits on Long Island. So my name is Ken Serini. I'm founder of the Imagine Awards, and it's my pleasure to be with you here today. First, I'd like to extend a thank you to our sponsor, Jovia Financial Credit Union, for sponsoring today's event and supporting the incredible work done in the nonprofit sector. We just couldn't really do it all without you. So before we kind of jump into today's event, I'd like to turn it over to Rich Tavares over at Jovia Bank for a few brief words. So Rich.
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Ken said, I'm Rich Tavares, Community Relations Officer with Jovia Financial Credit Union, and we're extremely excited to be sponsoring today's Let's Imagine event. At Jovia, we take great pride in being a good corporate citizen, and we're deeply committed to building a bright future for our employees, members, and not-for-profit organizations that we support. Today, we're thrilled to learn from the incredible winners of the 2024 Imagine Awards. Their dedication to innovation, making a difference in our communities is truly inspiring. On behalf of Jovia, we thank you and all the other amazing not-for-profits in Long Island for the amazing work you do each and every day for our community. It's our pleasure to be here, and let's make this an unforgettable event. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Rich. Totally appreciate and totally appreciate everything that Jovia does. This is going to be your opportunity, everyone, to kind of learn from these incredible individuals. So if anybody does have any questions, I mean, I'm going to be jumping in and asking a bunch of questions, but if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to work those questions into what we're doing. So again, today's objective is to learn from a group of highly regarded nonprofit leaders who are successfully moving the sector forward. Their experiences and insight will help guide you in thinking differently. And I think that's really, if you think about what's happening out there in the nonprofit sector today, and all the regulatory changes and what people are trying to do in terms of changing rules and everything, I think it's just important to have a strong sector and bring the sector together, which is what we try to do here with the Imagine Awards. So again, let's try to work together, let's try to collaborate more, and let's learn from each other. So that's what today is all about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel today. So we have a Rising Star Award winner from the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County, Moji. So thank you, Moji.
Morning, everybody.
Leadership Excellence Award winner, David.
Hi, everyone.
And I let David know a little bit earlier today, but I'll announce it live here now. LGBT Network is going to be the 2025 Hall of Fame recipient. So awesome job. Social Impact Award winner from SEO Family of Services, Suzette.
Good morning, everyone.
The Arts and Cultural Award winner from Spirit of Huntington, Mike.
Good morning, everyone.
The DEIA Award winner from Women's Diversity Network, Shanequa.
Morning, everybody.
And last and definitely not least, Hall of Fame Award winner for 2024 from the Viscardi Center, Dr. Chris Rosa.
Thank you, Ken. Good morning, everyone.
So thank you, everybody, again for joining me today. So let's kind of dive into this and let's get some questions answered for everyone. So let's go through and I guess maybe the first thing we should start off with is really understanding what each of you guys do, maybe a little bit about the size of your organization and what your mission is. So Suzette, since you're in the upper left-hand corner of my screen, you get to go first.
Thank you very much. So again, good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here and to not only share my thoughts, but to learn from this esteemed panel. So I'm Suzette Gordon. I'm the president and CEO of SEO Family of Services. And we are one of the area's largest human services organizations. We have about 3,000 employees. We serve about 50,000 New Yorkers in Long Island and New York City every year on a continuum of 6 core service areas, which I do want to take the time just to quickly highlight. Education, family permanency, housing services, residential and juvenile justice, community health and wellness, and services for individuals with developmental disabilities. Our budget is about $270 million. So really large, really impactful. And our mission is to deliver vital human services to New York's vulnerable children, families, and adults in the community. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. David?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. Again, it's great to be here with our fellow panelists and award winners. And thank you to Ken and Serini Associates, not only for the award, but for the service that you give to the not-for-profit community every single day of the year. It's so important to have folks like you and the entire organization that are advocates for the community. So
the truth of the matter is, with the great work that you do and the miracles and magic you do on a daily basis, how could everybody not want to support this sector?
I don't know. Some people should go to the Suffolk legislature, I guess. So, and the Nassau for that matter, but especially Suffolk these days, which I'm sure will come up in our questions later on. But again, my name is David Kilmnick. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the president and founder of the LGBT network, which started out as Legally Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth. I won't go into the story that you'll hear me tell all the time about how I founded it. It was my master's project in Stony Brook University, and which I was just about going to tell the story, but I won't. It'll take too long. So, but 31 years later, the organization has expanded to serve all different ages of the community. And we, while our work primarily remains mostly with young people and their families, and friends and parents, we do have extensive services for seniors and elders, including affordable housing in Bayshore, and 3 other community centers in Suffolk County and 1 in Astoria in Queens County. A lot of our work, while we have those community centers, is done out in the community. We're a community-based organization. We started out grassroots. We need to make sure that every single school, community, place of worship, workplace, which, by the way, we have a workplace summit coming up and a career fair, but is safe for our community. So our motto is that we're creating safer spaces where LGBTQ people live, learn, work, play, and pray, and that's everywhere. And we do that in so many different ways. So thank you again.
Awesome. Shanequa?
Hi, everyone. Shanequa Levin. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I founded the Women's Diversity Network in 2017, shortly after there was lots of people starting to come together because they felt like they were divided. And because on Long Island, it's set up for us to be so segregated. And I had been doing lots of advocacy work in a former role as a state director for an organization called Every Child Matters, where we did children advocacy. And I was just finding myself being in spaces with all one race, all one type of people. And I kept saying, how do we actually fight for marginalized lives and policies that impact us all if we can't even come together? So that's why I create the Women's Diversity Network. I serve as the founder and CEO and intern board chair. Plug if you're looking for a board chair role, come on over. Our mission at the Women's Diversity Network is to connect and mobilize women and gender expansive people of different backgrounds to create positive change through unity and collective work. We do that through educating our communities about issues and policies that challenge our unity, advocating collectively to break down barriers for improved inclusion and advocacy for all, and by celebrating our diverse backgrounds. And we do that through 4 equity areas. That's health, wealth, gender, and race. Thank you.
Awesome. Moji?
Hi, I'm Moji Pourmoradi. I am the executive director of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. What we do is we are mainly an educational building. We service students from 4th grade through 12th. We have seen a huge increase in the amount of students that come through our doors in the last year or 2, because I like to do what we call not only Holocaust education, but integrity education. It is sometimes we are the place, the resource to teach these kids about what it means to stand up, to speak out, to have their voices heard, to understand that the darkest moments in humanity can also be moments for huge light. And that is what we try to do every single day.
Awesome. Chris?
Good morning. I'm Chris Rosa, and I'm the president and CEO of the Viscardi Center. and we are a historic disability rights and advocacy organization based in Albertson, Long Island, but serving people with disabilities and their families across the life cycle throughout the region, certainly based on Long Island, but the 5 boroughs of New York City as well. And some of our services stretch into Westchester County. We're focused on the education, employment, and empowerment of individuals with disabilities. We're probably best known for our world-famous Henry Viscardi School, which provides a rigorous and inclusive education to kids from K through 12 who are medically fragile. And we're able to do that by having a state-of-the-art medical suite on site, which integrates care into the course of a traditional New York State Regents K through 12 education. Through our Abilities, Inc., we provide career readiness and placement services for individuals with disabilities. And we're particularly proud of our social enterprises, which really allows us to expand our scope and impact to thousands of individuals with disabilities. We have an award-winning digital accessibility services enterprise, which makes sure that web assets and digital resources are accessible to all users, including individuals with disabilities. Excuse me. We also acquired Able newspaper, which is a newspaper by, for, and about people with disabilities and their experiences. And our catchment area is Long Island and New York City. We have a circulation of about 15,000 subscribers and growing. And we're very excited. Tomorrow, we will have the groundbreaking for the National Museum of Disability History, which will be relocated in Nassau County at the Viscardi Center, moving from Buffalo. It closed its doors during the pandemic. And through some really important investments by the state legislature and the county, actually, County Executive Blakeman will be with us tomorrow for the groundbreaking. So we're excited to have you all in October 2025 when we open our doors to visit the National Museum of Disability History, which honors the deep roots of disability rights and disability advocacy that we have here on Long Island. Thank you.
If anybody hasn't looked at their website to determine if it is appropriate and covers all accessibility for the disabled, if they haven't looked at it, they need to reach out to the Viscardi Center. They do such a great job in terms of that. So thanks Chris, for everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Michael?
Oh, welcome everyone. I'm just blown away sitting here listening to all these amazing groups. It makes you feel so so small, but I think you guys are just all amazing, and I'm honored just to even be part of this. I mean, again, my name is Michael Kitakis. I'm the executive director at the Spirit of Huntington Arts Center. We believe creative expression transforms lives. We see it every day. We run an amazing community art center in Huntington. We've grown from a little gas station of 3 kids about 10, 12 years ago to over 500 students a week coming through our program. We work with a lot of great organizations, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And it's really all of those community relationships that we've grown over the years that let us expand into the markets that we're working and the people we're serving with disabilities. But we are a community center that's open for all ages and all abilities, and all welcome is what we say. And it's just an amazing place to come visit. I invite all of you to come down to it. The great thing is that we have everything from music to art to ceramics, sculpture, dance. We're now moving into performing arts. You know, it's all of these amazing creative expression outlets that allow our participants and our individuals to really, you know, really have a voice in the community and in the world. And that's what this is all about. We work with a lot, again, great partners that we're excited to share. A lot of our artwork is in museums, traveling throughout the county, and really highlighting inclusion and diversity in the arts. But so excited to be a part of this and share some good ideas with you all.
As Michael said, this is an incredible panel. So hopefully everybody has their pens and fingers going, because there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for taking notes. So let's just kind of jump in. So first question I want to throw out there is, what factors do you think are critical for both you and your organization's success? And Suzette, I'll throw that out to you first.
Oh boy. Couple things. I think that, to be successful as a nonprofit in this space, we've heard about all the incredible missions of our organizations. You really do have to have clarity around your mission. And everyone has to be aligned internally in terms of understanding what that mission is, because if you don't have that guide star, you're probably not going to be successful. I also think that it's incredibly important to intentionally cultivate a good, positive work environment and culture. And I'm using the word cultivate very intentionally because you're not going to have a culture where people are happy to come to work if you're not actually intentional about it, maintaining it, building it, cultivating it. I'll share at SCO, one of the rituals we have when we get together is we like to do something called Share the Love, which is living our values every day, where we elevate and highlight staff or people or departments who are exemplifying the values that we hold dear, because you really have to always bring it back to the staff. You have to let them know that it's important and that you want them to be happy. I'll mention two other things. Obviously, money, which probably I would have started with that, but mission really is probably the first, number one. But, I think, there's often a misconception about nonprofits. And what is a nonprofit corporation? It's a corporation. And we are all drawn to the things that we do. We're all passionate about it because of the mission and what we want to, support in our communities. But we're running a business. And to do that, you need money. So that's another important thing for success. And I think the last thing I'll say, although I could go on and on, but I won't, is that you need to have a strong team. In our space, we're oftentimes doing like 5 different jobs, and I like to say there's no work beneath me. Whatever needs to get done, if I need to roll up my sleeves, get it done. Titles go out the window. And I think a lot of our staff, they're like doing 3 different jobs, because of how mission driven they are. And it's just really important to build your team, to cultivate them, and also to trust them, because you cannot do this job alone. So those are a few of the things that I would highlight as just really critical for success.
Moji?
I could not agree with you more. I think that one of the things for full clarity, I've been at the job for a little more than a year. And so when you walk into a space that has existed for 30 years, you have to watch a lot in the beginning. And so when I was watching, one of the things that I quickly realized is that intentionality is what will drive. You have to know where you're going, and you have to know how you're going to get there. And then you get there. That's kind of what has driven us, is knowing what our mission is, knowing why we're doing it, and then figuring out the steps of how to get there together. We're not a very large staff. We don't have a very large budget. So intentionality matters even more. Understanding who you are every day. And we're also a staff that wears a lot of hats. You have to. You take one on, you take it off, and then you put on the other one, and then you keep going. And that's how the day goes. From early in the morning until late at night. So if you don't have that intentionality as a staff, as a cohesive staff, if you don't have that vision as a cohesive staff, if you're not all in this together, then the mission is so much harder. The boulders in front of you are bigger. And that's all we do. We break boulders every day. I don't know if you all feel the same way, but that's kind of what it is. We're breaking boulders every day. And if we're not all doing that together, it loses its passion for us. So that's intentionality is the word for us.
Moji, how many staff do you have over there?
6.
6. Yeah. And you're the small one in the group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shanequa, you have how many?
You're 6 also?
I'm like, I have 4
Okay.
part-timers at that
I
too.
just think that, just from what you do over there, I just think you're a much larger organization. So
I constantly think that myself.
Many hats, right? Many hats.
So Shanequa, you want to dive in and answer the question?
Sure. So I second everything y'all said about staff. Like, it's so important, culture, ethic. I'm not a micromanager. And someone mentioned that in the comments, and there's definitely, you want to give your staff support, and you also want to give them the autonomy to lead. And hopefully you find individuals that you don't have to micromanage. I don't have the capacity to do that. So if I have to handhold you, we don't probably have the best relationship to go forward. So I look for people that are self-motivators and that are committed to these issues, that get it, that understand it, and that, feel as passionate about them as I do. Another thing that I really think is important is being responsive to the community, making sure that the community is involved in the work that you're doing. You're getting feedback from them along the way. You're checking in on what the community's needs are. So that way you're not just creating programs because you think is a good idea, but it's something that is actually what is needed. And then of course, I have to mention funding. One of the lessons that I am learning is I thought I could build this great organization with all these magnificent programs where we're seeing great outcomes, and then we can just apply for funding and our programs will speak for itself. It's actually a lot about relationships and having these relationships with these funders and working and building on these relationships year after year. So that way you're developing a deep relationship with them and they are investing and seeing you as a partner and investing in your work. And what I recently learned is that 1% of the funding goes to Black-led nonprofits. So that right there, I'm a Black female, already puts me at a deficit of being able to make these connections. So looking for other people too that will open the doors for you and connect you to other funders that you would not be able to have the opportunity to. And I'm speaking to the people out there watching. If you care about nonprofits, you have an issue that's concerning, you have access to philanthropy, open that door.
Chris?
Sure. Just to build on Shanequa's point about the importance of relationships, we're all mission focused, and I think we've all realized largely, Ken, through the platform that you've helped to create, that we're more powerful in collaboration and in coalition together than we could ever be by ourselves as individual nonprofits. So the power of coalition building, of working together on projects that are mission aligned, that value intersectionality of the communities that we serve together can be very important. And just building on Shanequa's point about funding and Suzette's point about the financial dimensions of our enterprises, understanding sustainability and the ways to sustainability for some of the great work that we're doing, particularly around public-private partnership buildings. I feel like that the benefit and the value of nonprofits is that we're closer to the need and closer to the action. And we have the ability, by virtue of our size and scrappiness, I saw that great adjective in the comments, that we can be nimble where larger governmental entities cannot be. And so the ability to lean on philanthropy, to invest in promising approaches that demonstrate great impact, and then turning with proof of concept to government entities and saying, look, the data demonstrates the power of our model. Consider funding us in a way that makes this best practice sustainable. For us, I think it has been a valuable path forward.
I think part of it is trying to get government to get out of the way and just let nonprofits do what they need to do.
But not too far out of the way, because we need their investment.
Yeah, no, I got that. I didn't mean it that way. I meant.
Sure.
David?
So let me just add on to the end of that. Like government, yes, we do need their investment. We need them to pay timely on their investment as well. Yeah. Because that puts nonprofits in a lot of stress, unnecessary stress. And something maybe I'll talk about later, that we should be able to charge them interest for their late payments. But in any case, I would say ditto to all that have spoken. And to add to that a little bit more, to expand a little bit more on what Shanequa said, is that, I think what's really critical to our organization's success is understanding who our community is, right? And that may be simple. People may think, oh, it's the LGBTQ community, right? Not so easy, right? Because the LGBTQ community is not monolithic, right? There's a lot of intersectionality. We know, as Shanequa said, where you live on Long Island, it's intentionally segregated so that there are going to be different factors that go into it. You know, our teachers are part of our community. Our parents are part of our community. Our corporate people are part of our community. So our organization's success has really looked at everyone who lives on Long Island as part of our community, and how do we bring them along? And I think just two other things on the organization aspect of things. I learned early on that I asked myself the question, is it better to be right or better to be able to do the job? And I say that is because for those that have ever worked with marginalized communities or stigmatized communities, we may not like how someone frames something or not, but I'll give you an example. Like in the beginning, we went by Long Island Gay and Lesbian. We went by it because that's the name of the organization, right? But we went by legally a Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth. And, a lot of our work, it started out in schools, and a lot of the work is still out there in the community and schools right now, still fighting to get into some. But so there was one school that said, oh, we can't call it LGBT 101. And let's see what we could do with the acronym legally, right? And they said, let's call it Long Island Game and Leisure Youth instead of Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth. So I was like struggling at that time saying, you know what? No, and then I thought the most important thing is to get into that class to talk to the kids, right? So that they know that it's okay to be who they are and that we can move forward. And I've used that as a way to move forward over the years to say, when do we need to stand up and be right? Or when do we need to be able to do the work that we need to do and work within the, work within the structures that we have or the systems that we have while we try to change those systems at the same time. So that was one thing. I just want to add one more thing onto, the part of the question about about your success or my success, I guess. That are critical to the organization's success. And for me, I've been doing this now, or I've been 31 years, right, since I founded the organization. I'm the longest serving CEO or executive director or president, whatever, the top leadership position, right, of a LGBTQ nonprofit in the entire country. And sometimes it's very difficult not only working with the external factors, this is for all marginalized communities, working internally, right? With the communities you serve. And so part of the success is certainly to, again, engage more people in the community, like Shanequa said, but also for me at the stage that I'm at right now is to let other people lead, right? And that has been extremely valuable for the organization success, for mine, as I may look at, I'm probably going to do the share tour, right, where it never ends. But, as I think about, I had to put share in, why not? We're a gay organization. But, but to kind of take a look into the future of, doing some transition planning now, and stuff like that. But to let other people lead. Up until a year ago, I had to look at every e-blast. I had to, I have my undergraduate degree in public relations, which I say I use a hell of a lot more than I do with my master's in social work and my PhD in social work. But, so I had to look at every e-blast. I had to, and I let that go last year. And what amazing work. It's a different way of doing it, but it's amazing. So I think part of our success, and I wish I did it earlier, is you let other people lead because we have such great talent out there.
Michael?
So I think you guys all hit on this, and it is all and everything you're mentioning, and the only thing I'm just going to add to it is kind of identifying those strategic alliances that make the difference. And none of this, at least in our organization and our growth that we've been able to double every year in the last 6-7 years, has been built on those relationships. And I think you have to identify that anybody could be that strategic partner for you, it's just realizing you have to go that extra mile and sometimes give, even though you don't see the receiving coming back, right? So as much as it's you want to sow and reap, but a lot of times, it's a lot of sowing and the reaping comes later. But I think if you realize that, and you realize that some of these partnerships and some of the organizations that you can align with have other ways of giving back, that's really the difference. For us, it's always been, well, can we help this organization, even though it's not directly involved in our mission? But sometimes those things do come back. And that's really what we've realized, that a lot of the seeds I planted 10 years ago are starting to bloom now, But so it really is a giving of yourself and looking at this almost like a ministry in some ways. You got to keep giving, realizing that it is going to come back to you. And those relationships that you develop are the building blocks, and then you start to identify those revenue streams where those relationships come back into play, So, starting out with one little organization we partnered up with, and now having over 20 groups that we, work with great groups that are very, very large and much larger than we are. And then realizing that we can partner up in different ways with them to do different types of programming is really the difference of it, So I think everyone's right onto it. I'm just adding the little thing about the strategic alliances.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that came up in your answer, so that's great, and a lot of different directions we can go on in. I do want to kind of grab hold of one of those, and this I think is going to be more for Chris and Suzette, in terms of, you guys talked about staff, and you talked about the need to retain staff, and in smaller organizations it's important too, but when you're looking for a staff person, when you have 5 or 6 people, you can, I know it's hard, but you can kind of cherry pick who you want. When you're looking for a staff member, when you have 2,000 employees or 1,000 employees, and trying to keep them, especially when turnover in the nonprofit sector is much greater than turnover in the for-profit sector, it's a challenge. So if you guys can maybe, Chris and Suzette, I guess Chris, we'll start with you. If you can maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing to keep your staff motivated and attached to your organization.
Sure, Ken. And I know that we all lose a lot of sleep around this very issue, because for us, for outside Viscardi, it's the single most concerning and single most important resource when it comes to our ability to make an impact. It's our team that drives our mission, which is responsible for the lion's share of our ability to empower people with disabilities and their families. And truth be told, the data does not lie here. They're undercompensated compared to their peers doing comparable work outside of the nonprofit sector. Of course, we, like all of my colleagues here, we lean heavily into the mission, and I think that's why people come to work at the Viscardi Center, because they understand that while they're here, they're participating in a rich legacy of transformational leadership that will empower families and individuals with disabilities to change their own lives. And that in of itself is probably our single greatest selling point, and the single greatest factor that leads to retention. Creating and sustaining a culture, an organizational culture, which loves and values our staff and helps them to appreciate their critical role in partnership with the individuals we serve in changing lives and changing our society and culture, is a really big deal. Creating pathways, I think, for leadership development, helping them to appreciate that there's an opportunity to grow here and to ascend into larger, more responsible leadership roles, I think is very helpful. And wherever possible, and I know that I'm focused on this whole public-private partnership thing, but to the extent that there is a public dimension to the partnership where we can advocate for cost of living increases for funding for staff that drive our mission, we're all in when it comes to that. And speaking to people in power about the importance of investing in those individuals who drive our mission has been critical for us.
Suzette, did you want to add?
I will. I mean, I think Chris did a really excellent job on highlighting a lot of the challenges. I'll just elevate a couple of additional thoughts here. I think the point about, developing your bench in your organization and showing people that there is a pathway for them in leadership opportunities when they present is important. I've been in my role now for a year and a month, and my entire executive team is brand new to this level of leadership. But everyone except for one person who I hired externally is someone who has been with the agency internally, some starting their career as line staffs, working all the way up to the executive cabinet level. I think that that's a really important message for your staff to see, that, there is a pathway and that there's a commitment to developing them. I think that I will also note that, though, that particularly when you're providing direct care service, it presents so many challenges because, and by the way, this week is Direct Service Professionals Week, so I'll give a shout out for that. But when they're not compensated well, or business model is that we're partnering with government to get money to deliver the services. We're also fronting the money for government, and then they pay us whenever they get around to it, typically. And so there's a lot of challenges for organizations like us where you have to advocate and sometimes supplement where government is falling short. You're caring for vulnerable people, so you don't just want to get a body in there. You want to get somebody who's compassionate and thoughtful, who you're sending out to provide services to people who are incredibly vulnerable. And you're not paying them that well. You're paying them less than what Target can probably pay them. So there are all these dimensions to it. But I think cultivating the culture, figuring out what else you can do beyond salary, but making sure that you're constantly advocating for equitable pay for people who work in human services, I think is really, really critical. And that's where the collaboration comes in, because there is strength in numbers when you're trying to make that advocacy. But also, I think as an organization, you may have to do something to supplement that if government is falling short. It's not fair, and government really does need to step up. But the pay issue, I think, is the really critical piece here.
Right. I mean, one of the things that you hear about all the time is, as I said earlier, that the fallout in terms of employees leaving in the nonprofit sector is greater than the for-profit. And when you ask, a lot of the employees say they didn't know they had an opportunity to grow within the organizations they're with. And I think a lot of that, as you mentioned, Suzette, is that communication. It's making sure that every single employee understands that they have the ability to grow within the organization and where they can grow to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to add on to this before we dive into? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just want to say that, since I, again, have led, other people have led. It's not that I didn't do that over the 30 years, but really let go of some areas, that the people culture and the folks who took that over have done exactly that in terms of put together things for staff that show them the path to grow in the organization. And it has done wonders for morale and also longevity. And in addition to that, I mean, they shared with me, the leadership team shared with me that, staff are now asking, they want to learn more about grant writing. Oh my God. That is amazing, right? So, if we're able to do what has been said by the other speakers and, really support our staff in many different ways in lifting them up and developing them, it goes a long way. And all of our staff are doing, are essential workers, right, out there, and really, really important.
Anybody else want to add anything on this before we dive into Michael's topic that he brought up and everybody echoed? Collaboration. That's something that came up straight across the board. I think everybody kind of stressed the fact that collaboration and organizations working together is super vital and super important. So Michael, you want to talk a little bit about some of the ways that collaboration has kind of been critical to your success and critical to the sector?
No doubt. I think, we did touch upon it, but I think we can dive even a little deeper. For us, again, starting out with a very simple little art class one day in a garage, now working the way we are working and working with the groups and organizations did happen organically in some ways. But at the other side of it is, if we didn't go and visit a Free, or we didn't go visit a Life's Work or any of the other great groups we work with, or Rise, or even Viscardi in that case, if you don't go there and literally knock on the door and say, hey, can you tell me about what you do and show me what you do, you don't create those relationships. As much as you want to do things through emails and through all the digital world that we live in, it is kind of, you got to allocate in your week or in your month, a day to go visit. I try to stress to everyone in our organization, from the interns all the way up, that go out, meet people, talk to people. And when you start to do those relationships, you can build on it. And next thing you know, there's a group that's saying, hey, can you help us and do some programs here? Can you help us and grow that? Hey, I want to do a performing arts center. Hey, I was always thinking about doing this. And then when you start that relationship, you start to build upon what their needs are, and you can make those bridges happen. I think a lot of times people just expect, like, I got a website, I built our messaging, and everyone's just going to come, and a lot of times it's a sign in the desert pointed in the wrong direction, until you get out there and really start to connect. And that's why I was saying in the chat, the Imagine Awards is your first resource. What we are doing today is exactly that. Having the ability of seeing 300-400 of these groups coming together, that's where it all begins. Your mission gets enhanced between those strategic alliances. So now, instead of just reaching 10 people in a classroom, now we can reach 10,000 because of the 10 groups that we work with that each have 1,000, right? So next thing you know, you have that ability to really broaden your mission and enhance that vision that you've always had. But doing it by yourself in your silo is never going to happen. And I know it's like everyone realizes that, but I think you have to really, again, put that investment of time in there. And, from those smallest guys that are our partners up to the large, $70, $80 million groups that we work with, they all can give you a different perspective. And then you start to realize programs that can come out of that, organically too. But the reality is like, for us, our funding stream, although we do rely on support and charity in funding, but we do actually create our own business models. And that's really the difference. I used to run an advertising agency for 20-something years. So when we started this whole program, we said, oh, take a class, pay for a class, right? And being able to create a model of sustainability where if we don't get $1 of a donation, we can still continue to thrive and go on. Then when you do get those additional revenues coming in, then you can really build into new programs. So I think, you always have to think about that sustainability, but that sustainability becomes out of those relationships. It is that whole, you got to invest it and then it starts to come back. But I think it's important for all of us to remember that, we have to really get out there. And I can't say it enough that what I've gotten out of the Imagine Awards, and for all the people out there that didn't, come in and didn't win and didn't all that, just keeping in the game, meeting all these great organizations, I've made that money 10 times over that you think you would have won off of that award, which really means nothing in the scope of it. It's what we do here today, and that kind of networking that is the big payout.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Michael. Moji, you want to add on to that?
I'm so struck by everything that you guys are saying. I think that for us, we are in this world where it's seen as one thing, right? All of us we're defined by our names, but in order for us to succeed, we have to be so much more than that. And everybody has to be able to see the greater humanity in each of our little ventures, right? So that somebody from Suzette's world can come into the Holocaust Museum and see their story there. Or someone from David, I can go into David's world and see a little bit of myself. There has to be that kind of greater humanity. And that's the relationships that you're talking about. When Michael talks about going into another organization, it's not just to see what that organization does. It's to see the common humanity, the common mission in what another organization does. And that's how you meld, and that's how you work together. That's how you find who you are together to make something greater. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals infinity sometimes. Right? If you're able to understand what keeps us together. And that's why I think, Michael, I think it's genius to take that kind of time out of your in-house work to see what's going on in the greater world, to make those connections and those relationships a reality that makes you so much greater.
That's awesome. That's totally awesome.
Yeah.
Shanequa, sorry, but you have to follow that.
Yes, all really good points. I'm taking notes. One other thing I would like to add is when thinking about collaborating, and this is not all collaborators are created equal. So you want to set clear goals and expectations of what that collaboration will look like, who's responsible for what, and what are your goals, and even like timelines sometimes for things. Me, I'm a doer. So I'm going to get things done. I'm going to be proactive. But then I partner sometimes with people that just really want to put their name on something and don't want to do all the work to make whether it's a program or an event successful. So really, like, when you're having these conversations, figure out people's working style. How do you complement each other, or how are you similar? Who's going to be responsible? I just very much stress clear expectations and reoccurring meetings where you're checking in and holding each other accountable, having milestones, a checklist, because often you can have someone that can seem like they're going to be a really great partner, and then you end up resentful that you have done majority of the work and their name is on it just as big as yours, and funding that you're receiving from the project is just as much as yours, but you've done all the work. So just do your due diligence and really kind of vet people and have some clear outlines and expectations and check-ins.
Chris, Suzette, David, any of you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add, just to build on Shanequa's point about finding the right partner and understanding each partner's role in a collaboration. We seek partners who are aligned in values and purpose, but we also look for partners who bring us subject matter expertise that we don't possess ourselves. And we look to lend our own subject matter expertise where it may be augmented in our partners. For us, a good example is our disability entrepreneurship program. I think people who value truly inclusive economic development realize that we need greater small business owners from historically underrepresented communities, including people with disabilities. Admittedly, at Viscardi, we have a lot of subject matter expertise around the nuts and bolts of inclusion, but we don't have any really in small business development. So we turn to higher ed partners at Hofstra University in their School of Business, and Iona University in their Entrepreneurship Institute, where in terms of the value alignment, they clearly want more historically underrepresented leaders to develop small businesses, but they don't have the deep roots in inclusion that we have. So we partnered with them, and the collaboration has been exciting. For the first time in a very real way, I think we see pathways to small business development for people with disabilities. And it's only possible because we each bring our areas of expertise in collaboration.
It's funny because I hear everybody talking, and as I listen, I'm like, all right, there's this organization would be a good connection here. This organization would be a good connection here. So yeah,
That's what we're doing too.
There are just so many.
Just know that.
There are so many organizations out there that kind of connect, and you don't always see the connection until you start having the conversations. And I think, Michael, that goes back to what you were saying, is you need to have those conversations, and something that you may not see up front once the conversations start. It's like all of a sudden, it's like boom, 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 everything falls into place. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll say too that is really beautiful is we're not, I don't really see my colleagues in the nonprofit sectors as competitors. I mean, maybe we are, but I don't really see it that way.
it's
I feel
competition.
I feel inspired, I feel, oh, how do you do that? Can you tell me more about that? That's interesting. I wonder if that would work for us, or would you like to partner to figure out if we could do this thing together? And I would also highlight this idea of just there being strength in numbers, where you get together with your colleagues to advocate around an issue. And I'm not going to get around the issue. I'm not going to get into the details of a recent issue that I've been collaborating on, because I want to stay a little bit away from the political space a bit here. But that is a very empowering thing, to have this common issue and to be working with others around it. And there are organizations that pull nonprofits together. You guys do a really amazing job of that. In my world, the foster care world, there's Kafka for child welfare agencies. There's a Human Services Council. Having those spaces where it's a collaboration and you're speaking with one voice to advocate for an issue is a really incredible thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, going back, and we're not going to get into the political arena, but going back to the issue you were referring to, just seeing all those nonprofits in a room, a lot of which had never met before, and around a common goal, I think is super important because it strengthens the sector as a whole. So, David, did you want to add anything?
Add on to that,
Oh, sorry.
and a lot that will never make that amount, still being there, championing that.
Yeah.
So
I think that was so moving, like understanding the larger issue, that, because, when you're analyzing it, if you're like, okay, let me look at myself, how would this hurt me? Is it going to really hurt me? Maybe not that much, but that's really not the question. The question is that, when there's a common issue that, is rooted in misunderstanding, is misguided, is misintentioned, that's affecting your community, you get together, even if your stake in it really isn't that big, to push the larger goal. That is a very beautiful, inspiring thing, that I just love seeing and being a part of.
Actually, Shanequa, that threw the legislators off a little bit when they said, "Wait, why are you here?" And it really did have a huge impact, which people don't realize. But those smaller organizations stepping up and everything had a really, really big impact in the discussion.
I was there in spirit and by writing letters.
David, do you want to add anything, or we good?
Yeah, I mean, just quick, agree with, all the different types of collaborations, right? That could and do take place. The formal ones, where the expectations certainly are laid out. And I do think it's real important for, all of our type of organizations to come together, because there seems to be a tendency to now, give a big chunk of money to some of the larger hospital systems, right, which have a different approach than we do as a not-for-profit sector. We have a community-based approach, and I don't know if this has happened to anyone out there, but we've over the course of the years, we've had, large healthcare institutions, hospital systems that have come to us that, have really good grant writers on staff, and have won grants for the LGBTQ community, and they come and tell us this will be really good for you, which is a little bit patronizing. And so this will be really good for you. We want you to be a part of it. And that, our part of it is to help get them people for what they got funding for. Yet they want us to do it for free. And so, and the value of our work and being strong together to show that the value of our work is really important. And the more that we could do these collaborative things that bring in funding, because we're coming from that community-based approach, as opposed to a disease approach, is really, really important. And one last thing, there's a lot of pretty much all of us on here are addressing some sort of ism, right? That's out there. And I know we don't want to get into the political arena, but it is about politics, right? And we can't avoid it, and we shouldn't be afraid of it as nonprofits as well. There's a lot we can do, that on the 501c3 end. And one of the things I think we can do collaboratively is that when one of the isms that we're addressing within our organization, whether it's anti-Semitism, ableism, sexism, racism, heterosexism, homophobia, transphobia, is that, if it may not be part of our specific mission, we collaborate by speaking up and supporting organizations when these happen too. And that's a powerful, different type of collaboration I see that could take place, and that does take place, but could take place more, and one that I think we're going to have to rely on, given the state of the world that we're living in today. Not only the state of the world, the state of freaking Suffolk County, and I mean, so I think we got to just be real in terms of what we're facing, what we do, and how, there was a wise woman who said we're stronger together, and the world would be a hell of a lot different if she was president back then. And the world will be a hell of a lot different if we never go back again and we move forward. And there's one way of doing that, and that is by truly seeing each other, Moji, like you said, within each other, but also supporting one another when something's happening to, the community or clients of constituents of the organizations we serve.
So again, there's a lot of points that just keep coming up, and so I guess from a government funding perspective, a lot of the organizations, especially a lot of the larger organizations, are heavily funded by the government, and the government doesn't seem to ever pay enough to cover the bills for the work that you guys are doing for the government. Having said that, obviously you have to supplement it some way, and a lot of you guys have tapped into the ability to approach donors and do fundraising and everything else. So let's kind of switch, because Suzette, you have mentioned it, and a bunch of you also have mentioned the fact that I guess Shanequa, you mentioned it too, the need for funding, the need for money coming into the organization. So I don't know, I've found that there's a lot more competition for dollars these days in terms of fundraising dollars. Organizations that hadn't been in the marketplace for fundraising have now jumped in. So fundraising has become more challenging, and you also look at the economy, and that hasn't helped the matter either. So what are some of the strategies you recommend to connect with donors and keep donors giving to the organization? I know some of the statistics are not too good in terms of, if a donor gives money to a charity, less than 50% of them will give a second donation. So what are you guys doing to kind of keep the donors connected to your organization? Who wants to kind of start with that? No one
can start. I think from we have a vocation program. We do digital marketing and advertising for our clients. It's working with our disability community. In that, we work with over 15 not-for-profit organizations on mission, vision, and values, and obviously all of them want to get involved in fundraising and marketing, to raise dollars. So we do a lot of that event marketing, I'm going to call it. I think the commonality of all of this is to realize that it's more than just saying, hey, sponsor a hole for $5,000, and then that's it, and you never see that organization again. I think what you have to do is, again, go back and build those relationships with your donors to understand some of their needs, understand how to get that when they do give messaging out there to those to their constituents as well. So in our world, we do a lot obviously in the art world, and we may then use some of our artwork on display at some of the organizations. It's putting a sign there, it's doing a social media post that they help support it and they gave to us, and they're putting it on their social media, and then they put it into their newsletter, their email. You have to get involved in all levels of that, because it's not just, here's the money and say goodbye. You have to try to build on that. That doesn't mean you have to start building the social media post, but you got to think that there is a story that they need to tell for their reasons as well. And you really got to dig into what their reasons are. It's not just, I feel good, or I like Michael and I'm going to give them $5,000, right, for that. It's really like, what else are you trying to do and accomplish with your goals as an organization, whether from the private or from another not-for-profit, is to understand their needs and then being able to help communicate that in their sphere and their storytelling. So all of that is important, and to give, that creates those relationships, those ongoing ways of, hey, now that you had that picture hanging up in your hallway, can I give you another one, a different one? Can we take it out? Can we bring some of the kids down and take a photo? Can we add that? All of those things are part of you, because everyone here has to be an individualized marketer for their organization as well, to get their message out and do the storytelling. So it is that side of it that we often forget. And we just think because we put that ask out there and that it ends there, and it doesn't. It's really just the beginning at step one, you know.
Go ahead, Moji.
If I could add to that, David spoke about isms, right? So people will give to the ism that resonates with them the most. That's number one. They're gonna say, oh, I hear that, I feel that, I want to give money towards this ism because of whatever, for whatever reason. And so there's that, and that, check that. But then it goes back to what we originally said. People need to know that you have clarity in who you are as an organization. They need to believe that you believe in who you are and where you're going and who you're benefiting. There has to be that. I believe that a donor will give once because of the ism, but they will continue to give when they believe that you believe in what you are doing. So it's to tap in again and again and again doesn't work unless you have clarity. We have clarity as organizations. And I think that's the main thing that people will connect with and think bigger. For me to give to another ism, I have to understand everybody else's modus operandi and what's their passion inside.
Yeah.
And I think that's what resonates with most givers.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And I think so, in addition to the ism, people will give because you asked, actually. Sometimes it really is just as simple as asking. You're not getting an answer if you don't ask the question. Now, the answer might be no, 50% of the chance, yes, 50% of the chance. So you just have to remember to ask, can you support me? Because sometimes it's literally that simple. And I think that you have to have a sense, again, it goes back, as you said, to the mission, because you have your mission and what you're trying to achieve, and the donor out there, the unknown donor, is wanting to support something. And I think that when you have that alignment, that's when you get that support. So it's really important. What my development person tells me all the time is listen to your donor, be donor centric, talk to them, communicate, show them the impact of their giving, track it, use data, qualitative things, stories to really keep that connection and communication going. So those are some things I would add to what's already been said, but I agree with everything.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And if I could just build on Suzette's, I think, really insightful approach. I think we're all trying to reimagine the paradigm for donor engagement around those core principles. We realize that people with capacity have very different expectations about investment. I mean, that's in some respects how they got to have capacity, right? So as donors and in donor engagement, this is at once mildly terrifying, but also very catalytic in terms of your ability to raise funds through philanthropy. I think about the concept of venture philanthropy. And while we don't offer an equity stake in Viscardi, we're not shareholders, we do offer equity in our enterprise, and we try to engage donors as true and meaningful partners in the success and growth of our organization. And doing that means, listening very closely to donor priorities and intent, making sure that you can incorporate that vision into your mission without compromising who you are at your core, and keeping them updated on metric-driven outcomes so that they can see the success of their investments. And they can track it in the same way they track their stock portfolio, quite frankly. And it sounds very, cold and mercenary, but in some respects, in addition to the warm fuzzies that we're able to give, on some level, they want to see the return on their investment in philanthropy, and our ability to vividly illustrate that allows for donor engagement and and growth in relationships with donors.
Shanequa, David?
Yeah, I mean, I would just, I mean, everything everyone said, right? And I think that, talking about impact, storytelling is extremely important. And one of the challenges that that we have, and not just we here on Long Island, but LGBTQ organizations have, is, believe it or not, only 4%, 4 to 6% of LGBT people give to LGBT causes, right? It boggles our mind, like, what the hell, And so, so we, going back to what I said earlier on, is that who is our community? Everyone's our community. And we can tell a story for everyone and how it impacts us. We brought in people over the years for our galas, like national LGBTQ people, and, 3 or 4 folks who've really been on the national level doing a lot of stuff. And they would come to our gala. They say, you have the straightest gala out of any galas we've been to. And that's because we really see our community as larger than just the LGBTQ community. What we've done recently also for the LGBTQ community is that generally after the age of 21, it's like, in the health and human service field, or at least for funding for it, it's like you're forgotten, right? Like the funding's out there for LGBTQ youth, some degree for seniors. If you are in between 21 and senior starts at 50, but if you're in between, 21 and 50, there's very little funding out there to get to provide services to that to that age group. And also for folks that are between 21 to 50 in those years, and even in their 50s, they don't feel like there's a sense of community on Long Island for them. So we've started to create different opportunities, and kudos to our staff who are brilliant in doing this, to create other opportunities that bring together people for community, while at the same time it's for a cause, supporting our anti-bullying program. So they just did one. They came up with, it was called Rainbow Rides, and this is like car enthusiasts, people who love their cars, and they go to car shows, and they did the first one this past weekend. And I was like, who's going to come? I mean, I like my little GPS system, but not like, all of this stuff, and, but there was like 50 people that came, right? They supported the anti-bullying work that we did. They felt a sense of community because they said they didn't feel safe at other car groups. And I could see why, because for the advertisement for this, they posted it into like Long Island Car Meetup or something, and I can't tell you the amount of hateful stuff that followed that. And so, finding different opportunities, at least within our sphere, that could create community at the same time, but also align it with the mission. And our mission is building community. So that just by doing that is, meeting our mission, but also a larger cause to it, has been very, very helpful. I think there was a pet meetup too. There's all these little different things that we're now giving people a chance to, in a different way. Not you don't have to come for a counseling session. You don't have to, be stressed or traumatic, or dealing with something. You just want to meet other people, right? And you want to feel part of a larger community. And so, we've looked at other ways of being able to do that without the funding, to tie it to the everyday work that we do.
Cool. Anything to add, or we good?
No.
I mean, one of the things that, again, going back to the whole fundraising thing, it's just as we all said, it's like thinking a little bit differently, right? It's not about, and Michael, I think you mentioned the golf outing. It's not about the golf outing anymore. It's how do you partner? How do you partner effectively with the people that your donors, and trying to find ways to better partner with your donors. I think a lot of you talked about, when we talked about fundraising, even before we talked about fundraising, is impact and the ability to show impact overall as a organization. So what are you guys doing in terms of tracking and measuring impact? Because that's super vital in nonprofit organizations. So what are you doing and how are you doing it? Shanequa, we'll start with you on that.
Sure. So one of the things we do with our programs is surveys and interviews. And we do that with our participants right away when they start a new program. And then we do, midway through the program, we'll do another evaluation and where they're having one-on-one interviews and filling out some type of feedback survey. And then at the end, we do a post-program survey. And then we take that and we analyze the data. And that lets us know all through the project if we need to pivot, because you don't want to do a whole program and the people aren't benefiting from it, or they really have a great suggestion on how you can tailor something better to their needs, and you haven't done those things. So having those 3 times in which we check in with them and we see where they're at on the spectrum of their learning, their growth, their knowledge and understanding, the beginning, midway, and at the end, really helps us determine how well we're doing as an organization, what's successful, and how we need to pivot. Every year we pivot. Every year we're making some minor improvement or directional change to the way we were doing something. And I'm very humble. If something ain't working, we're not going to keep doing it just because I came up with it. We're not going to do that. We're going to make sure that we do what's working for the people. And you don't know that if you're not asking. Another thing that we do is we will generally put out community surveys to our larger network of people that support the organization to see if the issues we're working on are still relevant, if there's still things that they want to get behind and support, and if there are things that are still needed. So that way we're getting the community participation and involvement as well. And those are just some of the things that we do.
Michael?
Yeah, I'll go on a smaller level. I think there's a lot of things that are immeasurable in our world of, service and support to the individuals. Just like I'm going to compare it to brand. It's hard to know if your brand is effective and working at times. I mean, you can relate to sales. I can relate to how many people are involved in our program or how many classes we're producing in that particular week. But I think you might want to get more more introspective on some of the success stories and think about that as part of your measuring, because you're measuring obviously for your constituents. You're measuring to show that you're doing good work. Even highlighting and getting some individualized stories of people you've helped, things that you've supported, things that really have made the difference. It's not always so much the quantity, it's sometimes just the quality of that. I work with a company called TSI&Y in the city. It's a transition services. We do amazing classes in Queens. In fact, I'm heading there in 15 minutes to do an art show. But the reality is we have one individual who, because of what he's been working with in the class in the last 6 months, went back to get his GED and is applying to art school. Now, that's one story, but that's one story that's very impactful that we can tell as a success story and that measuring stick. And then people remember sometimes that as opposed to, yeah, we went from 500 to 600 students a week and we did this and we did that. Sometimes you got to hook onto that one powerful testimonial or one powerful story of an individual or a person that you may have helped. And that could be really impactful for your storytelling.
David?
Sure. So, measure and impact. I mean, there's the quantitative way, right? And soon, and we mix that. For example, we have our National Coming Out Day campaign, which National Coming Out Day is October 11th. And traditionally, it's for people coming out as LGBTQ. Many, many years ago, we said, we're gonna approach this a little bit different. And it's gonna be for everyone to come out for safer spaces for LGBTQ people. Right. And so this little campaign that we did, when I say little, we cut rainbow and trans ribbons now, and we've always cut them. There's posters, there's all these materials that we provide. And it exploded about a dozen years ago, where all of a sudden I saw it was like our campaign was in Thailand, it was in England. We knew, I don't know how the hell they got it, but we, and so, we'll have that coming out, like how many football fields of ribbon have we cut, and the impact of the program. And along with that, we're able to, part of people getting this packet, which now has turned into a fundraising thing this year too, because people are sponsoring the packets now. But people post stuff on social media, people send us pictures, and we're able then to show the impact of people in all their different institutions, in schools and workplaces, in government buildings, or was in government buildings in the previous administration, you know, and you know, and in all these different places, and that is amazing. You know, but I think that, you know, the quantitative stuff is, I want to say, is sort of easy, but I think, like Michael, like you said, not everything not, you know, maybe on a grant to a government funder, it's like you have to do this many, this many, this many, but that doesn't necessarily tell whether it was successful or impactful. And
Right.
so everything you will see, or not every, most of what you will see on our social media now is about people telling the stories. So whether it's the career fair that's coming up next week, you're going to have people from previous career fairs that went there and said, I found a job where I could stay on Long Island and be myself, right? And you'll see the 25, 30 people that are recruiting different companies. You know, we have a workplace summit the end of this month, and you'll see people talking about how being part of the LGBT networks workplace summit and our larger project has helped them to increase DEI efforts at their organizations to be LGBTQ inclusive. And then you'll see also a program, you know, we have there's a National Day of Silence in which the goal is for students to be quiet in school, not say anything, someday in April every year. And you know, that is to represent the silence that so many LGBTQ kids face when they're in schools because of the bullying. You know, and we said, well, that's fine. That's not good enough. We're about really, we're not about being silent. We're really out there about being voices and out there as being advocacy. Although one could argue that is still having a voice. So we created something called Break the Silence, right? And that's a huge program we have at night. It's held in our parking lot because we build a cinder block wall, and the kids come down, they put construction hats on, they spray paint all the names that they're called in school pretty much every day. And then they get empowered by taking that sledgehammer and start knocking down the wall. And it is something that is just so moving, so empowering. And for the kids to tell their stories and to be their true authentic selves and see them be empowered is something we not only show in pictures, but kids want to tell their stories. And so that's one of the ways we talk about it. We measure the impact as well. So
That's
we do
awesome.
that for everything. Yeah.
Moji?
That's so powerful. So powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that you quantify on large levels and on almost minute levels, right? So the first week that I got there, I'll just tell one very quick story. There was a picture that was going around on social media of 3 middle school boys wearing gas masks and doing the Heil Hitler salute. And it went viral in their town. And what we did was we brought those 3 boys in with their parents, and we spoke with them, and we had the opportunity to look at that one of them, the one with the gas mask, look at him in the eyes and really talk to him. And afterwards, he hugged us, he cried, he apologized. And that little thing was quantifiable for us. And it's sometimes that small. It has to be sometimes that small. And it also sometimes has to be going from seeing 2,500 kids a month to 5,000. And knowing that just the numbers in and of itself quantifiably can make a difference. We are hitting more kids. We are teaching more kids. We are reaching more. We are doing more. There, you know, like if you don't ask, you don't get. If they don't come, we can't do. Right? So we have to be able to quantify in small numbers and in large numbers in order to be able to know that we're making that kind of difference. I don't know what we're still really, in all honesty, trying to figure out how you quantify what the experience is. Like, I don't know how we can say, oh, we changed 5,000 kids a month. I would love to say that. I don't know that we have that capability, right? We don't. We don't, but we're not gonna stop trying. And we're not gonna stop trying to say we made that difference. You know, we have our Upstander Award, which is, in my opinion, a wonderful avenue to try and quantify on a larger level. Because we ask kids all around Long Island to write about moments where they stood up and tried to make a difference. And then they get to reread all the essays, every single one of them. And then those kids get to read their essays in front of our Upstander dinner. The little and big, it has to be little and big is my 2 cents as far as quantifying the good that we do. But we're not gonna stop, whether or not we can measure it or not, we keep going.
Can I add to that a
ahead.
little bit?
Yeah.
'Cause I think that on the point of, you know, I hear I forget where I was recently, but someone came up to me and they said, you know, oh my God, David, you came to my class, you know, over 25 years ago in East Meadow, and you helped, you know, you changed so many minds. Right. And I hear that a lot, like, you know, people we changed all these minds. We didn't do that. Only the individual has the power to change their minds. Right. But what we have the power to do is to go out there and educate and make people think and make people feel and understand. Right. And tell those stories that we're telling. Just wanted to add on to that because like what you were saying, and that's what you're doing with, you know, issues around anti-Semitism, making sure that the Holocaust does not disappear, or that people don't try and alter history, you know, and it's so important because that makes them think and makes them learn, understand, and then think, and then hopefully be advocates as well.
Chris, Suzette, anything else on impact?
Very quickly, these guys are a very tough act to follow, David and Moji. So I'm going to look at impact from a slightly different lens because you guys have been focusing on external. I think that, you know, your impact story is important, not just for your external people, but for the people internally to understand their work, not just the effect of their work and the quality of it, but also to help them manage. So I'll just tell one quick reference point because I know we're running out of time. At SCO, we're trying to become more data driven so that we're not making decisions off of a vibe or a hunch, but what the data tells us. So we are developing systems. We use this thing called Power BI to generate reports for us. So I could ask, what was the overtime at this house? So I can understand what's happening, you know, from a management perspective, or give me a report on all of our vice presidents and how they're doing with filling out their performance evaluations. So at every level, we're trying to collect and analyze data internally so we can understand the impact for the people internally. And then that also connects with your ability to do a good job and how you connect externally. So that's the one point I would make on that piece.
And if I add one tiny other thing that goes along with what you said, another thing I do when I'm doing yearly reviews, I have my staff also do a yearly review on me. So that way they can tell me which ways that I am being supportive and helping them in their work and which ways I need to improve as well. Because sometimes we're so like doing everything and so in the trenches of stuff that we may miss something in a way that an employee needs to support. So, and I think periodically getting a 360 evaluation is really helpful too, to be able to assess your leadership and the ways that you are being successful and ways that you need improvement.
Chris?
That's a great best practice, Shanequa. Thank you. And just to lean into what Suzette has said, we've tried to emulate that same approach to assessment. One of the things I think we'll all acknowledge is that our assessment is hard, even under the best of circumstances, even with intentionality, and that by virtue of all the reporting that we do, whether it's to governmental entities or to our donors, our organizations are data rich, but information poor. And so rather than reinventing the wheel, leaning into the data that we already have, even though it's maybe not aligned in quite the way we need it in order to tell a story, that may be some of the best effort that we place in terms of assessment, because it's already in our hands. We just have to figure out how to interpret it and align it and use it to empower us. And then the other thing is just a shout out to our digital accessibility services team, which has made us more conscious of the power of digital resources. Is rather than doing old-fashioned pen and paper case management, we've been trying to lean into digital case management using data reporting systems like Metasced to report out on some of the efforts. And we're trying to utilize our efforts to outcomes by encouraging our staff to realize that they're not only recording case notes, that ultimately they're collecting data for us, and that each and every effort for a really quality case note in aggregate could be data that we could use to analyze the effectiveness of our performance. So a paradigm shift in terms of how we report on what we do could ultimately help us to assess efforts.
There's so many other topics I wanted to get to. You guys were awesome. I just, if I can hold it, each of you guys, to maybe 15, 20 seconds here, just some key tips that nonprofits that are listening should take away from today, or whether it's something we talked about or not. So Moji, can we start with you?
I learned more today than I could possibly tell you from these people. 15 seconds, keep on doing what you're doing. It makes a difference. And ask. If you don't ask, you won't receive. So just, I think that was my takeaway. But we make a difference, and we need to be aligned with the people who are in the same boat as us to move forward.
I always like to go back to one of my favorite quotes, and I think we all have summarized this too, but never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, and that is Margaret Mead. And so I just inspire you all and everyone to don't give up and keep going, keep pushing through. And nonprofit stuff is a lot of work. It's draining, it's fulfilling, but burnout is real. So make sure that you're getting some self-care in there. I work hard and I play hard. Self-care is so important. So that's what I have to contribute.
Michael?
Perseverance. That's what everyone's saying. And it really is about that. The more you stay in the game, wake up every day. You know, the quote I live by is, we have done yet nothing today. We got to start it all over again, right? So we haven't accomplished anything as of yesterday. Start your new day, start it all over again, and keep going on.
David?
Same pretty much as everyone else has said, and just add in that, we're for us to understand that the work that we're doing is, we are essential workers out there, right? And it's important to remember that, and for it to be recognized. And I think our collective power together to ensure that attacks that are happening right now against the not-for-profit sector locally in Suffolk County, we need to, certainly stick together and be stronger on an advocacy level as a not-for-profit sector. We are the largest employers out of any sector in New York State, in fact, in all 50 states. And so if we use those skills as a way to kind of take a look at advocating for better funding for our organizations, better support for our organizations, and et cetera, there's nothing that could stop us. So,
Chris?
Just to amplify what everyone else has said throughout our time together today, which was wonderful, was that obviously we all center on keeping the people and the families we serve at the heart and the center of all that we do, and finding new and different ways to amplify that is our best work.
Suzette?
Thank you guys so much. I've learned so much. I've enjoyed this time with you. 3 things. Learn as much as possible. Lead with humility. Don't forget your mission, but you're also running a business. And I'll leave it there.
So as I said to you guys yesterday, when you guys were incredible. You guys are amazing. You guys did a great job, and hopefully everybody will be able to take some insight into what you shared with them today, because I think this was really, really great. I do also want to thank Jovia again for sponsoring today's event. And before we wrap up, I just want to let everybody know that the applications for the 13th annual Imagine Awards are going live today at noon. So as everybody had said, you got to be in it to win it. You got to be part of it. And, you know, just being able to be in the room with all these incredible people and being able to share ideas and to have that communication, I think is super, super important. So again, don't forget to jump on and get the applications in. And thank you everybody for attending. And hopefully we'll see you all at the Imagine Awards on Tuesday, April 29th in 2025 at the Crest Hollow. So thanks everyone. This was great.
Thank
and
you.
we appreciate it.
Thanks,
I know.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.